Over these last few weeks, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy have been able to orchestrate some of the craziest comebacks I've seen all year in the NFL. Most recently, coming back from the Lions in the NFC Championship game by 17 points. That's the most in NFL history. In the second half alone, the Niners were able to outscore the Lions 27-7. And in the first half, it didn't look like this would be the Niners' case, because honestly, they were being manhandled. And for me, watching this team under Kyle Shanahan, these type of comebacks have been basically non-existent. But now in big time moments, 2 weeks in a row, Purdy, as well as his head coach, have risen to the occasion. So while I've been hard on Kyle Shanahan in big time moments, especially in the second half of playoff games, now I must give credit where credit is due. Shanahan and Purdy look to have grown into a pair that can overcome any obstacle thrown their direction. So much like Andy Reid has a potential GOAT in his hands in Patrick Mahomes, San Francisco might have found their next Joe Montana in Brock Purdy, a true comeback kid. So in this video, I wanted to examine the comeback Purdy as well as Kyle Shanahan executed against the Lions and why it gives me so much faith against the Kansas City Chiefs. While I could just jump in and talk about how great Brock Purdy has been for the San Francisco offense, and don't get me wrong, he has been great because he's unlocked the deep ball ability, has mobility, as well as just being a true winner for this team. But the fact is, none of that would matter if Kyle Shanahan didn't alter his play calling in second half games in big time moments. In the past, I think he would move away too quickly from the run, but in this game, we didn't see that. Rather, we saw him run it more in the second half than we did in the first half. For instance, he only ran it 11 times in the first half, but 19 times in the second half. And this has been the key for Kyle Shanahan over these last few weeks. He's dying on his core identity. It's just earlier in the game, Kyle Shanahan as well as this entire offense needs to get going. But let's examine what they did well in the second half of this most recent Lions game. Starting out early, I did like how San Francisco ran away from Aiden Hutchinson, and they put their best players on the top of the screen in George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk as lead blockers for Christian McCaffrey, picking up a nice gain of 8. These second and short situations is often where you'll see Kyle Shanahan's offense be extremely explosive as well. When you watch this play, for instance, you can see how the play action draws up the linebackers as well as the secondary, but pay attention to how where the linebackers were supposed to be in their drop is exactly where Brock Purdy is throwing it, to Deebo Samuel over the middle. And this is where the Niners often live and die because of their play action and the ability to draw up these backers like you've seen. One thing I was monitoring in this Lions game was Purdy's ability to find the open check down. And here in the third quarter, he's able to find Deebo Samuel with pressure in his face. Coming out of the Green Bay game, this wasn't the case though. Purdy even said after the game, he was often looking for the big play. In the second half of this Lions game though, Purdy did a perfect job of just taking what the defense gave him. Rather than forcing it to Brandon Ayuk, for instance, on this play, he just takes the easy check down to Deebo Samuel, and it picks him up 9 because of how great the players are around him. And while many will make this a dock on Brock Purdy, that's a great thing. You want a quarterback who understands the strength of his team, not a quarterback who's constantly trying to make the big play happen by himself. When the play does break down, however, like it did here on 3rd and 2, you do want a quarterback who's able to extend it and make some athletic plays though. Here, for instance, Purdy doesn't have anyone open and needs to extend this play, and finally is able to find Jauan Jennings with a perfectly placed ball. I mean, when you watch this, if he placed it any lower, it definitely would have been an interception, and any higher, probably would have been a tip from Jauan Jennings and an interception as well. While this wasn't a touchdown for San Francisco on their first drive out, it was a sign of life, something that was non-existent up to that point. Moving on to the Niners' second drive in this half, this is a play design I absolutely love by Kyle Shanahan. He sends Kyle Juszczyk in motion and then play actions to Christian McCaffrey. This is able to freeze the backers enough to get the ball to Deebo Samuel in open space. While many will think Deebo Samuel did this entire play by himself, the fact is, if Kyle Shanahan didn't set up the run with Christian McCaffrey, the backers wouldn't have jumped, and Deebo Samuel wouldn't have as much space as he did. And going into this Kansas City game, I expect Kyle Shanahan to continue to run the ball. Kansas City is in the back half of the league against the run, and they're top 5 in the league against the pass. And if the Niners are able to be successful in the run game, that should open a lot in the play action game, and then this offense can really get humming. Bouncing back to this Lions game though, perhaps there was no bigger play than this deep shot to Brandon Ayuk. And while many will just say Brock Purdy got lucky here, he was supposed to throw this ball. As you can tell, the safety jumps on the route to Deebo Samuel, so Brock Purdy lets it fly. And even after the game, Kyle Shanahan said that this was the right read. And yeah, there are plays that you're just going to let your guy go up there and have an opportunity to get it. And right here, Brandon Ayuk got it. A few plays later, Brandon Ayuk would score the touchdown. But here, what I really want to pay attention to is how Purdy is able to operate within the pocket. His pocket mobility and awareness is absurd, as well as his ability to deliver while moving. I mean, this is right in between two players and a perfectly placed ball for Brandon Ayuk to catch it. While Purdy is often keeping his eyes down in situations where he's scrambling, the fact is he can also burn teams with his legs. I think he's one of the more sneaky athletic quarterbacks in the league. For instance, when you compare Brock Purdy to Lamar Jackson, his 10-yard split is only 0.01 seconds slower. That's absurd for a 7th round pick. And Purdy's 40-yard dash of 4.84 seconds is only 0.04 seconds slower than Patrick Mahomes' 40-yard dash, but he is quicker than Patrick Mahomes. One of the most mind-numbing takes I've heard all year long is how Brock Purdy is just a system quarterback and doesn't really elevate the play around him, and basically any quarterback in the NFL could be as successful as Purdy has been. But the fact is, here for instance, with Purdy facing a cornerback blitz, he's able to break this tackle and find Kyle Juszczyk on the sideline. Not many quarterbacks across the entire NFL could do that. When you also throw in the fact Kyle Shanahan didn't abandon the run and really leaned into it in the second half, that's a recipe for success for Kyle Shanahan's offense. But we also need to give props to Brock Purdy, the quarterback who orchestrated a beautiful comeback. Here, for instance, he's under pressure from Detroit's defense, but being one of the best quarterbacks in the league under pressure, you can see how Brock Purdy is able to quickly identify George Kittle coming open. And the timing and anticipation Purdy shows under pressure is why he's the #1 quarterback under pressure in the NFL. Headed into the Super Bowl, I'm really interested to see how aggressive Kansas City wants to be with Purdy, because he can burn you with plays like this, but if you also just run a soft zone coverage, he can dice your team up. And over these last few weeks, I think we've also seen Purdy grow as a scrambling quarterback. He's not taking unnecessary risks, and often has made big plays when it's mattered most. On San Francisco's final touchdown drive, for instance, Purdy broke out on 3rd and 4 and picked up a gain of 24. These are the type of plays I love seeing in the playoffs, because yeah, it's a situation in which your quarterback might get hurt, but also if he doesn't pick this up, your team might go down. While this video has primarily been focusing on how lights out Brock Purdy played, the fact is, none of this would be possible without Kyle Shanahan refocusing on the run game in the second half. And now looking into this Kansas City game, I expect him to look at one of the worst defenses against the run and say, yeah, let's run CMC, mix in some play action, and then try to get ahead. Not try to play this comeback game they've been playing these last few weeks. But if they do need to come back against the Kansas City Chiefs, I have a lot of faith in Brock Purdy. Over these last few weeks, I believe he has proven that he is one of the better quarterbacks San Francisco has had in years, possibly since Steve Young or Joe Montana. And if he is able to win this game, he might just get a gold statue in front of Levi's. But ultimately, these are just my thoughts on Brock Purdy and his stellar performance against the Lions, and I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.